welcome to the next edition of the HP Discover podcast series. I'm Dana Gardner, Principal Analyst at InterArmor Solutions, your host and moderator for this ongoing discussion on IT innovation and how it's making an impact on people's lives. Our next big data use case leadership discussion explores how retail luxury goods market analysis provider Sky I.T Group has upped its game to provide more buyer behavior analysis faster and with more depth. We'll see how Sky I.T changed its data analysis platform infrastructure and why that has helped solve its challenges around data variety, velocity, and volume to make better insights available to its retail users. Here to share how retail intelligence just got a whole lot smarter, we're joined by Jay Hakami. He's the president of Sky I.T Group in New York. Welcome, Jay.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you for having us.
We're also here with Dane Adcock, Vice President of Business Development at Sky I.T Group. Welcome, Dane.
Thank you very much.
And we're also here with Stephen Zeddy. He's Vice President and Chief Technology Officer at Sky I.T Group. Welcome to BriefingsDirect, Stephen.
Thank you, Dana, and I'm looking forward to the chat.
Yeah, no, these are really hot topics these days. Dane, let me start with you. What would you top handful of trends that are driving the need for greater and better big data analysis for retailers? Why do they need to know more, better, faster?
Well, I think that customers have more choice. And so as a result, they need to be more agile and responsive and certainly fill the customer's needs more completely or lose the business. I think that is driving the entire industry into practices that mean shorter times from design to shelf in order to be more responsive. I think that it's created a great deal of gross margin pressure because there's just simply more competition and more selections that a consumer has to make with their dollar today.
Sure. Now, is there anything specific to the retail or process around luxury goods that is even perhaps more pressing when it comes to this additional speed, this more choice, basically higher expectations of the end user?
Well, yes, the risk of making a mistake, the downside to making mistakes in terms of designing product and allocating it in the right amounts to locations at the store level, carries a much greater penalty because it has to be liquidated. There's not a chance to simply cut back on the supply chain side, and so margins are more at risk in terms of making a mistake. And so today, whereas 10 years ago, from a fashion perspective, it was about really optimizing the return on and focusing on winners. Today, you also have to plan to manage and optimize the margins on your losers as well. So it's a total package.
Okay, so clearly the more you know about what those users are doing or what they've done is going to be essential. It seems to me, though, that we're talking about a market-wide look rather than just one store or one retailer or one brand. How does that work, Jay? How do we get to the point where we've been able to gather information at a fairly comprehensive level rather than cherry-picking or maybe getting a non-representative look based on only one organization's view into the market?
Well, the solution with SKYPAD, what we're doing is we're actually collecting data from the supplier, from the wholesaler, as well as from their retail stores, their wholesale business, and their .com, meaning the whole omni-channel. And when we collect that data, what we do is we cleanse it to make sure it's meaningful to the user. Now, we're dealing with a connected world where the retailers and the and the wholesalers, the suppliers, have to talk to one another and have to plan together, the buying season. So the partnerships and the insight that they get into the product performance is extremely important, as Dan mentioned, in terms of the gross margin, in terms of the sell-through information. And what SkyPAD does basically is provide that intelligence, that insight into this retail/wholesale world.
Yeah, but correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't this also a case where people are opening up their information and making it available for the benefit of a community, or recognizing that the more of data and the more analysis that's available, the better it is for all the participants, even if there is an element of competition at some point?
Dana, that is correct. I think the openness is people. I mean, the retail business, they like to share the information with their suppliers, but they're not sharing it across all the suppliers. They're sharing it with each individual supplier, and then you have the market research companies who come in who kind of give you aggregation of trends and so on. But the retailers are interested in sell-through. They're interested in telling X supplier, this is how your products are performing in my stores. And quite frankly, if they're not performing, then there's going to be a markdown. There's going to be a less than a margin for you and for us, quite frankly. So there's a strong interest between the retailer and a specific supplier to improve the performance of the product and the sell-through of those products on the floor.
Right. All right. Well, before we learn more about the data science and dealing with the technology and business case issues, tell us a little bit more about Sky I.T Group, how you came about, and what you're doing with SkyPAD to solve some of these issues across this entire supply chain and retail market spot.
Well, I'll if you don't mind, I'll take the beginning. I'll give you a little bit of the history, Dana, and then maybe Dane and Steve can jump in and tell you what we're doing today, which is actually extremely complex and interesting at the same time. We started with SkyPAD back in about 8 years ago. We found a pain point within our customer where they are dealing with so many retailers as well as their own retail stores, and they're not getting the information that they need to make sound business decisions on a timely basis. So we started with one customer, which was Theory at the time, and we came to them and we said, okay, we can give you a solution where we're going to take some data from your retailers, from your retail stores, from your .com, bring it all into one dashboard so you can actually see what's selling, what's not selling. Fast forward, we've been able to not only take EDI transactions, but also take retail portals. We're taking information from any format you can imagine, from Excel, PDF, merchant spreadsheets, bringing that wealth of data into our data warehouse, cleansing it, and then populating the dashboards. So today's SkyPAD is giving a wealth of information to the users by the sheer fact that they don't have to go out by retailer and get the information. That's what we do, and we give them on a Monday morning the information they need to make decisions. Dane, can you elaborate more on this as well?
Dane, you might be on mute. Are you there?
Yes, sorry. So, this process has evolved from a point in time when EDI was easy because it was structured. But it was also limited in the number of metrics that were provided by the mainstream. And as these BI tools have become more popular, the distribution of data coming from the retailers has gotten more ubiquitous and broader in terms of the metrics. But the challenge has moved from reporting to integration of all these, identification of all these data sources and communication methodologies and different formats that can change to week because they're being launched by individuals rather than systems, in terms of Excel spreadsheets and PDF files, and sometimes they come from multiple sources from the same retailer. So the challenge today, if one of our accounts would like to see all of their data together so they can see trends across categories and different geographies and markets, is to bring all those data sources together, align them to their own item master file rather than the retailer's item master file, and be able to then understand trend and which accounts are generating the most profits and what strategies are the most profitable. So it has been a shifting model from reporting, the challenge of reporting all this data together, to data collection. And there's a lot more of it today because more retailers report at the UPC level, size level, and they report at the store level. And they're broadcasting some of this data by day. And so the data pours in, and the quicker they can make a decision, the more money they can make. So there's a lot of pressure to turn it around.
Right. Now let me understand, Dane, when you're putting out those reports on Monday morning, do you get queries back? Is this a sort of a conversation, if you will, where not only are you presenting your findings, but people say they have specific questions about specific things, and do you allow for them to do that? And is the data, therefore, something that's subject to queries?
Yes. I mean, it's subject to queries in the sense that they are able to do their own discovery within the data. In other words, we put it in a BI tool. It's on the web, and they're doing their own analysis. They're probing to see what their best styles are. They're trying to understand how colors are moving, and they're looking to see where they're low on stock, where they may be able to backfill in the marketplace, and trying to understand what attributes are really driving sales. And but of course, they're coming back, and they always have questions about completeness of the data, and when things don't look correct, they have questions about it, and that drives us to be able to do analysis on the fly, on demand, and deliver some responses about all your stores are there, all of your locations, everything looks normal, or perhaps there seem to be some flaws or things in the data that don't actually look correct. So not only do we need to organize it and provide it to them so that they can do their own broad, flexible analysis, but they're coming back to us with questions about how the data was audited, and they're looking for us to do the analysis on the spot and provide them with answers, satisfactory answers.
Great. Sure, fine. Now, Steve Zetti, we've heard about the use case, the business case, how this data challenge has grown both in terms of variety as well as volume. What do you need to bring to the table from the architecture and the data platform to sustain this growth and provide for the agility that these market decision makers are demanding?
Well, we started out with an abacus in this sense, but where we are today is that we collect information from thousands of sources, literally on every single week. Close to 9,000 files will come across to us, and we'll process them correctly and sort them out what client they belong to, and so on and so forth. But the challenge is forever growing. We needed to go from, let's say, older technology to newer technology because our volumes of data are increasing, and the amount of time that we need to consume the data in is static. So we are quite aware that we have a time limit, and so we've been hunting for and found Vertica as a platform for ourselves to be able to collect the data into a coherent structure in a very, very rapid time as opposed to our legacy systems. And it also allows us to treat the data in a truly vertical way, although that has nothing to do with the application itself or the database itself. But the concept that in the past we had to deal with each client separately Now we can deal with each retailer separately and just collect their data for every single client that we have. That makes our processes much more pipelined and far faster in performance. And the secret sauce behind that is the ability in our Vertica environment to rapidly sort out the data, where it belongs, who it belongs to, and then calculate it out correctly and put it into the database tables that we need to do, and then serve it back to the front end that we're using to represent it. So that's why we've kind of shifted from a traditional database model to a Vertica type model where it is 100% SQL for us, so it looks the same for everybody who's querying it, but under the covers we get tremendous performance and compression and lots of cost savings.
Great. Now, for some organizations, the issue of dealing with the variety, that is to say different sources, different types of data, cleansing is one problem, and then the ability to warehouse that and make it available for queries is a separate problem. But you've been able to, in a sense, tackle those both at the same time with the same platform. Is that right?
That is correct. We basically get the data, and we have proprietary parsers for every single data type that we get, and there are a couple of hundred of them at this point. But all of that data, after parsing, goes into Vertica, and then from there we can very rapidly figure out what is going to where and what is not going anywhere because it's incomplete or it's not ours, which happens, or it's not relevant to our processes, which happens. So we can sort out what we've collected and very rapidly, and then integrate it with the information we already have, or just insert new information if it's brand new. Prior to this, we've been doing this by hand and to a large scale, and that is not effective any longer with our number of clients growing.
Right. All right. I'd like to hear more about what your actual deployment is, but before we do that, let's go back to the business case for Dane and Jay. When Vertica came online, when Steve was able to give you some of these more pronounced capabilities, how did that translate into a benefit for your business? How did you bring that out to the market, and what's been the response?
I think the first response was wow, and I think the second response was wow. How can we do this, fast and move quickly to this platform? Let me give you some examples. When Steve did the POC with the folks from HPE, we were very impressed with the statistics we've seen. In other words, from going from processing time of, let's say, 8 hours to 9 hours to minutes, that's a huge advantage that we saw in terms of the business, from the business side, showing our customers that we can actually load data much faster. The ability to use less hardware and infrastructure as a result of the architecture of Vertica allowed us to reduce and will continue to reduce the cost of infrastructure. So some of these two are the major benefits that I've seen in the evolution of us moving from our legacy to Vertica. And from the business perspective, again, if we're able to deliver faster, more reliable to the customer, we accomplished one of the major goals that we set to ourselves with SkyPAD.
Sure.
Let me add something there. On Monday morning, Jay's exactly right, and the real impact as it translates into the business is that we have to stop processing and stop collecting data at a certain point in the morning and start processing it in order for us to make our SLAs on reporting for our clients, because they start their analysis. And the retail data comes in staggered over the morning. It may not all be in by the point in time that we need to cut that processing off. So one of the things that moving to Vertica has allowed us to do is to cut that time off later. And when we cut it off later, we have more data as a rule for a customer earlier in the morning in order to do their analysis. They don't have to wait until the afternoon. That's a big benefit. They get a much better view of their business. And the other thing that it's enabled us to do is we are able to drive more more metrics into the database and do some processing in the database rather than in the user tool, which makes the user tool faster and it provides more value. For example, maybe age on the floor. We can do the calculation in the background in the database, and it doesn't impede the response in the front-end engine. So we get more metrics in the database calculated rather than in our user tool. So it becomes more flexible and more valuable.
So not only are you doing what you used to do faster, better, cheaper, but you're able to now do things you couldn't have done before in terms of your quality of data and analysis. Is there anything else that is of a business nature that you're able to do vis-a-vis analytics that just wasn't possible before that might, in fact, be the equivalent of a new product line or a new service for you?
Well, let me try to address that one. This is Steve. In the old model, when we get a new client, we have to essentially recreate the processes that we've built for other clients to match that new client, because we are collecting that data just for that client at that moment. And so 99% is the same as any other client, but 1% is always different. And it had to be built out. So onboarding a client, as we call it, took us a considerable amount of time. We're talking in weeks. In the current model, where we are centered on retailers, the only thing that would take us a long time to do in this particular situation is if there's a new retailer that we've never collected data from, and we have to understand their methodology of delivery, how it comes, how complex it is, and so forth, and then create the logic to load that into the database correctly to match up with what we're collecting for others. So in this scenario, since we've got so many clients, very, very few new stores, new retailers show up, and typically it's just our client's own retail chain. And therefore, our onboarding is just simplified, because if we're getting Nordstrom's data from client A, we're getting the same exact data for client B, C, D, E, and F. So it now comes through a single funnel, and it's the Nordstrom funnel. And it's just a lot easier to deal with. And so onboarding comes naturally.
Yeah. And just in addition to that, since we're adding more significant clients, the ability to increase variety, velocity, and volume is very, very important to us. We could not scale without having a Vertica as a foundation for us. We would be, standing still rather than moving forward and being innovative if we stayed where we are. So this is a huge, huge fundamental change and very instrumental change for us going forward.
All right, Steve, tell us a little bit about your actual deployment. Is this a single-tenant environment? Are you on a single database? What's your server or data center environment? And what has been the impact of that on your storage and compression and costs associated with some of the ancillary issues?
Okay, well, to begin with, we are coming from a multi-tenant environment. Every every client had its own private database in the past, because simply in DB2 we could not add all these clients into one database and get the job done. Not enough horsepower to do the queries and the loads. So we ran a number of databases on a farm of servers, as you could imagine, on Rackspace is our hosting system. And when we've brought in Vertica, we put up a minimal configuration with 3 nodes, and we're still living with that minimal configuration with 3 nodes. And we have not exhausted our capacity on the license by any means whatsoever in loading up this data. The compression is obscenely high for us, because at the end of the day, our data just absolutely lends itself to being compressed. Everything repeats over and over and over and over again every single week. So in the world of Vertica, that means really it only appears once in wherever it lives in the database, and then the rest of it is magic. So not to get into the technology underneath it at this point, but from our perspective, it's just very, very effective in that scenario. Also, in our DB2 world, we are using two quite costly large SAN configurations with lots of spindles so that we can have the data distributed all across the spindles for performance on DB2, and that does improve the performance of that product. However, here in Vertica, we've got stock is 600 gigabyte drives, and we can just pop more in if we need it to expand our capacity. And with the 3 nodes, we've had 0 problems with performance, it has not been an issue at all. We're just looking back and saying, wish we had this a little sooner. So the setup was, Vertica came in here and they did the install for us initially, and then we ended up taking those servers down and we ended up reinstalling it ourselves. So with a little information from the guide, we were able to do it. We wanted to learn it for ourselves to do so. So that took us about a day and a half to 2 days as opposed to Vertica doing it in 2 hours. But other than that, everything is just fine. We've had a little training. We've gone to the Vertica event to learn how other people are dealing with things. And honestly, it's been quite a bit of fun. Now, there's a lot of work we have to do at the back end to transform our processes to this new methodology. There are some restrictions on how we can do things, updates and so forth. So we had to re-engineer that into this new technology. But other than that, no changes. The biggest change is that we went vertical on the retail silos, and that is just a big win for us.
Sure. Now, as you know, Vertica is cloud ready, and is there any benefit to that further down the road where maybe it's around issues of spike demand in the holiday season, for example, or for backup and recovery or business continuity? Any thoughts about where you might leverage that cloud readiness in the future?
Well, we're already sort of in the cloud. I mean, these are dedicated servers, but our business, the volume increases in the stores around holidays is not doubling the volume. It's adding 10, 15, maybe 20% of the volume for the holiday season. And it hasn't been that big a problem in DB2, so it's certainly not going to be a problem in Vertica. We've looked at virtualization in the cloud, but for the size of hardware that we actually want to run, because we want to take advantage of the speed and the memory and everything else, we put up pretty robust servers ourselves. And it turns out that in secure cloud environments like we're using right now at Rackspace, it's actually just simply less expensive to do it as dedicated equipment. And to spin up a machine like another node for us at Rackspace would take about the same time as it take a virtual system set up and configured, a day or so. They can give us another node just like this on our rack. So it's financially, we looked at the cloud every single time that somebody came around and said, here's a better cloud deal, but so far owning it seems to be a more financially more better financial approach.
Yeah. All right. Looking to the future, before we close out, I suppose the retailers are only going to face more competition. They're going to be getting more demand from their end users, their customers, for user experience, for information. We're going to see more mobile devices that will be used in a .com world or even a retail world. We're going to start to see geolocation data brought to bear. We're going to expect the Internet of Things to kick in at some point where there might be more sensors involved, either in the retail environment or across the supply chain. So clearly there's going to be more demand for more data, doing more things faster. Do you feel like you're in a good position to do that? Where do you see your next challenges from a data architecture perspective?
Well, at this point, not to disparage too much the industry of luxury, they are not the bleeding edge on the data collection and analysis side, where they're on the bleeding edge on social media and so forth. So we have anticipated, and we've got some clients where we're collecting information about their web activities, and we have done analysis for identifying customers who are presenting different personas through their different methods as they contact the company. So we're dabbling in that area, and that's going to grow as it will become so tablet-oriented or phone-oriented as the interfaces go. And a lot of sales are going to go through social media, not just the official websites in the future, potentially. So we will be capturing that information as well. We've got some experience with that kind of data that we've done in the past, so this is something I'm looking forward to getting more of. But as of today, we're only doing it for a few clients.
Okay. Let me just add in terms of planning, Dana. One of the things that we're looking at, we're very, very well positioned between as a hub, if you will, between the wholesaler and the retailer, the wholesaler and their own retail stores, as well as the wholesaler and their .coms. One of the things that we're looking into, and this is going to probably get more oxygen next year, is also taking a look at between the relationships and the data between the retailer and the consumer. As you mentioned, this is a growing area, and the retailers are looking to capture more of the consumer information so they can target markets to them, not based on segments, but based on individual preferences. And this is something that, again, huge amount of data that needs to be cleansed, that needs to be populated, and then presented to the CMOs of companies to be able to sell more, market more, and be in front of their customers much, much more than ever before.
Yeah, that's a big trend we're seeing in many different sectors of the economy, is that drive for personalization, and it really is a result of these data technologies to allow that to happen. Last word to you, Dane. Any other thoughts about where the intersection of computer science capabilities and market intelligence demands are coming together in new and interesting ways?
Well, the thing that I'm excited about is the whole approach to leveraging some predictive capabilities alongside of the great, inventory of data that we've put together for our clients, and not just about creating better forecasts of demand, but optimizing different metrics using this data to understand when products should be marked down, what types of attributes of products seem to be favored by different locations of stores that are obviously alike in terms of their shopper profiles, and bringing together better allocations and quantities and breadth and depth of products to individual locations to drive better, higher percentage of full price selling and fewer markdowns for our clients. So it's a predictive side rather in many, many different areas rather than discovery using a BI tool.
Right, and just to add to that, the margins. When we talked to CEOs and CFOs 5-6 years ago, and we told them, "Listen, we can improve your business by 2, 3, 4%," they were laughing at us, saying it's meaningless to us. Now, 3, 4, 5%, especially even in the luxury market, is a huge, huge improvement to business. So companies like Michael Kors and Tory Burch and Marc Jacobs and Giorgio Armani and Prada, they're all looking for those margins. So number one, how do we become more efficient with our product assortment? How do we become more efficient with distribution and of these products to different sales channels? And then how do we increase our margins? How do we not over-manufacture and not create those blue shirts in Florida where they're not selling and create them for Detroit where it's selling the hotcakes? These are the things that customers are looking at, and they must have that tool or tools in place to be able to manage their merchandising and by doing so become a lot more agile and a lot more profitable.
Well, great. I'm afraid we'll have to leave it there. We've been discussing how retail luxury goods and fashion market goods providers are using analysis from Sky I.T Group, and how Sky I.T Group has upped its game. We're using HP Vertica to provide more buyer behavior analysis faster, better, and cheaper. And we've seen how Sky I.T has changed its platform and solved the challenges around variety, velocity, and volume for that data to make those better insights available to those retail users and allowing them to become more data-driven across their entire market. So please join me in thanking our guests. We've been talking with Jay Hakami, president of Sky I.T Group in New York. Thank you so much, Jay.
Thank you, Dana. Appreciate it very much.
And we've also been talking with Dane Adcock, Vice President of Business Development at Sky I.T Group. Thank you, Dane.
It's great to have a conversation. Thank you.
Yeah, I've enjoyed it myself. And lastly, a big thank you to Stephen Zetti. He's Vice President and Chief Technology Officer there at Sky I.T Group. Thank you, Stephen.
And you're very welcome, and I enjoyed the conversation. Thank you.
And I'd also like to thank our audience as well for joining us for this big data use case leadership discussion. I'm Dana Gardner, Principal Analyst at Inter Arbor Solutions, your host for this ongoing series of Hewlett-Packard Enterprise-sponsored discussions. Thanks again for listening, and come back next time.